Broken Fathers podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered legal advice. If you are going through the family law court process, particularly as a father, then this podcast may be relevant to what you may experience. Some things we discuss in these episodes may be triggering, and if you suffer from any form of mental health related conditions or subject to domestic or family violence and need any assistance, then please call 1-800-RESPECT and Lifeline. The views and experiences discussed by people on our show are not necessarily the views and opinions of Broken Fathers podcast or their guest speakers. We strongly advise you seek your own independent legal and professional advice, as the Broken Fathers podcast will not be liable, answerable, or accountable for any loss or damage or litigation resulting from discussions on our platform. Right, this podcast is now in session. Hold on, guys. The judge is running late to court. So whilst we wait, I'd like to take this moment to acknowledge our platinum sponsor, Straight Up Construction. At Straight Up Construction, they take pride in delivering high-end work across every trade. From new builds to renovations, no job is too big or too small. Director Luke Miller and his dedicated team tackle every project with integrity, hard work, honesty, and a commitment to delivering superior quality results every time. Straight Up Construction is built on the belief that strong foundations matter just as much in the bones of a home as they do in the heart of one. Families should stand strong, and every loving parent should maintain their right to be a part of their children's lives. Straight Up Construction believes that in true Aussie spirit, everyone deserves a fair go. That's why we're proud to have Straight Up Construction as our platinum sponsor. With their support, we continue to produce the Broken Fathers podcast and shine a light on the struggles of men who have been let down by the system. Good morning, Broken Fathers listeners. On today's episode, for the first time ever, we're changing it up. We actually don't have a broken father. We have a broken daughter. The guest in front of me, she's a 42-year-old mother. She works in protective services. She's a full-time BJJ ninja. She's joined here with me today. Her name is Ella Ware. Welcome. Thanks for coming.
No, thank you for having me.
Yeah, look, this is, you got in touch with me through Instagram, and it was good because ever since I dropped that video, obviously I had a lot of broken fathers reach out to me, but I had yourself and also a couple of others reach out to me that were affected by the family court process growing up. And I just thought, you know what, this is awesome because I can get you guys on and I can view this from a different angle. So I appreciate you coming on. I think a lot of other fathers and listeners out there and daughters are going to appreciate you coming on telling your story. Before we dig into the court process and how it affected you, I like to get to know the guests and a little bit about them, where they were born, where they grew up, and what life was like for you growing up.
Well, I'm New South Wales born.
I
was born in Parramatta. Yeah,
Yep.
Go for the Blues.
Who do you go for in league?
Unfortunately.
No, I go for Blues.
Do you?
Yeah. Who do you go for in league?
Well, yeah, they're not so good anymore. When I was growing up, they were great, but yeah, modern day Blues, they're not so good anymore. Yeah. Born in Parramatta, moved up to Queensland when I was like 12 months old.
Yep.
Lived in Brisbane, grew up there.
What school did you go to?
Where did I go? Bundamba. We moved to Ipswich. So I went to kindy in Coorparoo.
Yep.
And then we moved to Ipswich, and then I went to like Bundamba Primary there. Not long after that, my parents separated and then moved to Silkstone, and yeah.
How many, you got siblings?
Yeah, I've got a brother and a sister.
And they're younger?
Yep.
Yep. And how old were you when your parents split?
So I was 8 years old
Yep.
when my parents split, yeah.
Yeah. What did mum and dad do for work?
So mum didn't do anything, so
Yep.
she was a stay-at-home mum.
Yep.
Dad worked as a mechanic.
Yep.
But the week, I was talking to him yesterday, and he said the week that they separated, I didn't know this either, he'd lost his job.
Oh, no way.
So he lost his job, and like he came home one day and we weren't there.
Can you remember much growing up until that point? So you said you were 8 years old when they split. Can you remember what life was like growing up just in general?
Life was good. Yeah, I remember our house in Coorparoo when we lived there.
Yep.
I remember we had like this massive grass hill that we would ride our trike down with my dad. I remember he used to build us like a billy cart, and we used to ride it down the hill.
Good old days, no social media, just playing.
So he was always mechanically minded.
Yep.
And he would always build us stuff, and yeah, we'd go riding on shit all the time. Oh, sorry.
No, we can swear. Swearing's fine. I say fuck all the time.
Yeah. So yeah, he'd always take us out and play with us, and yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Did you guys see cracks in your mum and dad's relationship I mean, you're pretty young, so
Yeah, I don't remember.
probably not them.
Yeah.
So your parents split when you were 8. How old were your siblings then?
So my brother would have been 6
Yep.
and my sister would have been 4.
Okay. And you
Yeah.
were living where at the time? At Silks?
So, yeah, we were in Bundamba
Bundy,
at the
yep.
time. Yeah.
And then your parents split. Your mum didn't tell anything to your dad? She just...
No, she just packed up and left.
Okay.
Like I had a phone call with him yesterday just to like
refresh the memory.
Yeah. And he said he just came home one day because he'd gone out with a mate. He used to work on his speedboat for him. So he went out. He'd go out racing all the time with this guy, and he'd race his speedboat around Wivenhoe Dam. So
Yep.
they'd go out camping. He said he went out, did the usual trip, came back, and we weren't there.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
Can you probably... You might not be able to remember, but maybe when your dad rejogged his memory, can he remember what happened from then? Like, did he know where you guys were? Did it take some time?
He ended up eventually finding out that we were with my grandparents.
Yep. Out at Silkstone?
No,
No.
so my grandparents lived in Nambour.
Nambour. So is that so when your mum and dad split, your mum packed his up and went to Nambour?
Yep. So she took us there. He ended up finding that out off his brother-in-law, I think he said yesterday.
Yep.
Which once he found that out, he said he drove straight up there. But he said the same thing. He drove straight up there. She must have been tipped off. And he said by the time he got there,
Gone.
we weren't there.
How far is that drive?
From Bundamba, it would have been like 2.5, 3 hours.
wow.
Yeah. So, yeah, he was sort of working really hard to find where we were. He obviously was like super stressed. He's lost his job. All of a
Doesn't
sudden
know
he's
where
come
you guys
home.
are.
We're not at home. He didn't know how to get in contact with us. This was like back in the day where there were no mobile phones, no internet. So he was kind of lost on where to go.
Yep.
He said eventually he ended up getting in contact again with his brother-in-law, and apparently he had organised for her to bring us to their house. By the time so their house is in Brisbane.
Yep.
When he got there, he said the same thing. We weren't there, but my mum showed up there and ended up trying to have a mediation with my brother-in-law there. He said it didn't go real well. She wanted full custody of us. She didn't want to allow him to have any access to us. He says to this day he still doesn't know why, and he doesn't know why she was like that.
Can you remember why she broke up, why they broke up?
No, he doesn't even know why. He just said he came home one day and we were gone. My mum, she's got a lot of issues.
Yep.
So I think she was obviously struggling with some mental issues at the time.
Yep.
She's got some drinking problems and has suffered with mental health sort of throughout her life.
Yep.
I think that's probably what happened.
Yep.
Because Dad would go away and she would struggle with us 3 kids, couldn't handle life. So one day she just packed up, went to my grandparents' house. They helped her out a lot. They would help her look after us. I think that's what she needed, was that support.
It's been probably, how many months before your dad tried to come out and see you? 3-4 months maybe?
It would have been, he said that we got packed up, he got home, and he said literally like within a couple of days he was driving out to Nambour to try and get access to us again because he didn't know where we were. He found out quite quickly where we were, but like I said, as soon as he rocked up there, we weren't there as well. Then they had that mediation quite quickly. She made it clear that she didn't want to allow him to have access. So from that point on, that's when he said he had to get solicitors involved. At the time, he also said because he had to spend all his money on the law and the court proceedings, he didn't have money to have accommodation for himself. So he ended up having to live with his brother. So he was kind of moving between there and a caravan park at the time.
Well, what happened to the house that you were originally living in when you...
Yeah, so they sold that.
Sold that, yeah, okay.
And because he lost his job at the time, he decided to start his own business.
Yep.
Because he decided to start his own business, a lot of that money that he got from the equity of the sale went into that, plus whatever he was using to fight the court battles, I would say. So, yeah, that's why he ended up not having any sort of stable accommodation. So he was sort of going between his brother's house, my uncle's house, and a caravan park. So the court system would have seen his unstable living accommodation, and that's probably what contributed to him only getting access every second weekend.
Hey guys, just a quick shout out to our gold sponsors. MCH Industries are a mining maintenance specialist company supplying solutions to the coal mining industry in the Bowen Basin and regional New South Wales. They supply superintendents, supervisors, leading hands, diesel fitters, tyre fitters, auto electricians, HV electricians, and trade assistants to assist. The mining one-stop shop for mechanical trades. MCH Industries are always looking for good blokes to jump on the team, so check out their Instagram for more details. And are you looking to buy, sell, or invest in real estate? There's only one name that's been leading the way for over 123 years, Ray White. Ray White isn't just another real estate brand. It's a family business built on ambition, trust, and leadership. Today, it stands as the largest real estate group in Australasia, connecting people with homes and investments across the country. Whether you're a first-time buyer, a seasoned investor, or looking for that perfect home, Ray White is committed to delivering authentic, local expertise. Because real estate isn't just about properties, it's about people, communities, and futures. And when it comes to trusted leadership, meet Alex Illian, an ex-Army veteran turned dedicated real estate agent. Alex knows what it means to serve, to strategize, and to get the job done. Whether you're looking to buy, sell, or just have questions, Alex is here to guide you every step of the way, servicing the Geelong, Bellarine, and Surf Coast areas. Ray White, the name you can trust in real estate. I couldn't imagine, like, some people might be listening and that aren't parents. Like, as a father, like, for example, have you ever, like, lost your purse or lost your wallet? That first initial thing, like, oh shit, fuck, where is it? And you just panic. I couldn't imagine coming home and your kids are gone. You know what I mean? Like that. Put that in perspective. If you've ever lost your wallet and that rush of feelings, like, oh shit, where's my wallet? You know, it's just, I couldn't imagine that feeling. Your old man's, he started his own business. He's had to invest a lot of money in that, and he's had to get solicitors involved. Well, where are we at now? We're probably a year later, maybe?
Honestly, it
would be hard for you to,
on
young.
the timeline. I just know he struggled for years and years and years and was chased by child support from the time I was 8 years old up until the time I was 16.
Can he remember at all the process? Like, did family court go on for so many years? Some of the things that happened during that time?
Yeah. So because he started his own business and he wasn't employed, child support saw that as a way that they couldn't garnish his, like, he couldn't garnish his salary, so they came after him in other ways. So when he started his own business, he said child support were after him with the income that he was pulling from his business, which, as the tax reporter, it was nothing. But this went on for years and years. Like, he started the business when I was 8, and he said the court proceedings didn't stop until, and Mum had enough of us by the time I was 16, so she kicked us out when I was 16. Yeah. And he said that's when the court proceedings stopped. So he battled for 8 years.
Yeah, wow.
And it was just a constant back and forth of when he had to save receipts because he wasn't paying child support physically and didn't have a wage to garnish from. He paid for our braces, he paid for our school fees, our school uniforms, everything else that we needed to be clothed and sheltered. And he said because he kept receipts of all of that, he was able to prove, that he was supporting us, even though child support don't really recognise that.
No,
yeah.
Don't get me started on that.
Yeah.
So from when you're 8 to you're 16, those 8 years, where did you live? Were you still living in the same spot, obviously with your mum and that?
Yeah. So we lived in Silkstone the
whole time?
Yeah.
And did mum work at all during that time?
Yeah, she worked as a bank teller.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
But she struggled a lot.
Can you remember what life was like those 8 years? Like.
Yeah. We were lucky because we had a lot of family support. So we were able to stay with aunties and uncles a lot because Mum did struggle having us and having us 3 kids on her own. She was an alcoholic, so she would work during the day. She was very functioning, but then as soon as she would get home, she'd be straight on the wine. And like I said, she struggled with us 3 kids. We were kids, and I felt guilty a lot because I thought it was my fault what had happened to us and the way that she treated us, because she always made us feel like we were a burden on her.
Yep.
I never really felt like she wanted us there. I always felt like we were there, you know, to torture Dad, you know, to make him pay for us, or to use us to get money from him.
As a pawn type thing?
Yeah.
Do you think, and I get this a lot, do you think she was being petty and spiteful towards your father?
I definitely think because she struggled mentally and she couldn't deal with life very well, she saw us as a tool to be able to make life easier for her financially. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's how I see it.
Yeah.
And when I look back on my past, that's how I look at it.
Yeah.
And especially now that I've got kids,
Yeah.
you know, I look at the way my childhood was, and I think, how the fuck can somebody raise their kids that way, and how can somebody treat their kids that way, you know?
Interesting you said that. The guest I had on yesterday said the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. During those 8 years, can your father remember, like, what the best outcome, when I say outcome, what the best times he had with you guys, as in, like, were there times where he had you for X amount during every second weekend type thing? Was there...
I think the whole time was, like, really rough on all of us because, and, like, from my perspective, I don't remember Mum taking us away and us not having access to Dad, but I do remember not seeing him a lot when I was a kid. So that was as a result of her pulling us away. And because of that, I didn't have a super close relationship with him. So I missed out on a lot of that. And then by the time I was 16, Mum had had enough and said, get the fuck out of my house. And she said it to me and to my two younger siblings.
Ones.
And, like, literally rung my dad up and said, you have to get these fucking kids now.
Wow.
And he drove straight down, picked us up, and then all of a sudden we're living with him.
Yeah. Can you remember what that was like? Can you remember that day much?
It was literally one of the worst times of my life because I was 6 months out of finishing grade 12.
Yeah.
It was probably the worst time for it to happen. You know, my two younger siblings didn't understand what was going on. I've got memories from probably the last 3-4 years of living with her where she would just lose her shit and pack our bags and be like, oh, I've had enough of you kids, you need to get the fuck out.
Yeah.
And, like, we'd just lose her shit and throw our shit outside onto the lawn and ring my dad and say, you have to come and get these kids now. And then he'd drive down and then she'd be like, oh, no, I'm really sorry. And she'd pack
Emotional
all
roller coaster.
Yeah. And this is all when we're, like, from 12 to 16.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
And, like, that suited her, you know?
It's what, I don't want to say, but, it's always around what suits them, you know? When it suits, you can have the kids when it suits them. Did your mother see anyone during those 8 years? Did she see someone else? Did she start dating anyone else?
Yeah. I wouldn't say she was seeing anyone else. I would just say because she was an alcoholic at the time, she had very unstable relationships. So a lot of her relationships revolved around drinking and partying and that sort of thing. And, if she was involved with anyone, it was just the fact that they would be over drinking and doing whatever else. And, luckily, we had a lot of family support. So we were able to sort of stay at aunties and uncles and not sort of be around a lot of it.
Yep. Can you remember what your dad was like when he came to get yours? I assumed he would have been over the moon.
Yeah, he was.
And it would have been sprung on him. So when he picked you and your siblings up, where did you go from there? Back to where was he staying at the time?
So he met my stepmom. I think it was a couple of years before Mum finally said, get the fuck out. And they were living in a house in Toowoomba at the time, and she's got two daughters as well herself. Because it was sprung on all of a sudden, it was literally like they had to get emergency cots and houses like that second.
So you were 6 months from graduate. What school were you at the time?
I was at St. Peter Claver College.
And then how was that transition going from being 6 months out from graduating to heading out to Toowoomba? Did you have to enter another school or just call it quits there?
So what happened is by that time, because I was going through a pretty rough time and I was leaning on a lot of my friends at the time, I ended up getting offered to stay with one of my friends and her family for a bit.
Yep.
And I lived in a spare room at their house for maybe, I think it was like 3 months, but I couldn't do it anymore. It got too hard. Like our friendship ended up suffering as a result because we were under the same roof. We were fucking 16 at the time.
Yeah.
So we were seeing each other at school and we were seeing
At
each other at
home.
home.
No balance.
Yeah. I also had a job at the time, so I was working at Pizza Hut, so it was hard for me. I had to like taxi to and from work because I didn't have my own transport. It was lucky I was getting a lot of support from Centrelink at the time.
Yep. I was going to say your wage was probably paying for the taxi, and then
Yeah,
not having
exactly.
much left over.
Yeah. So I tried really hard to stay because I didn't want to move schools because I knew how crucial that last year of schooling was.
Yep.
But I ended up having to bite the bullet in the end and move up to Toowoomba. And I probably was, like, at the time, because I wasn't super close with my dad either, I was closer to my friends. That was like a scary transition for me, moving up there and living under another roof. And I wasn't super psyched about being up there, and I just had a chip on my shoulder by that time. I didn't want to be around my stepmom, and I gave her a lot of grief at the time, and I gave my dad a lot of grief at the time. And I was pretty young by the time I ended up moving out and just living on my own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How old were you when you moved out?
From his place, I was like, I just graduated school, and I think I was like just about to turn 18.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. How did your siblings handle the transition, do you know?
My younger sister handled it the best.
Yep.
But she suffered a lot as well under my mum. So she was really grateful to be up there and feel loved.
Yeah.
My brother, he was kind of similar to me. Wasn't super happy about moving up there, but knew it was like essential because he couldn't do anything else.
They weren't happy. He wasn't happy about the location. So they're happy to move in with dad, but just not the location, being like Toowoomba, far out, and
and just new family too. Like we were just
just like that, snap transition.
Yeah. Because it was a fairly new relationship with my stepmom as well. It was just like all of a sudden we had 2 new sisters, and we had this new house, and we had this new life, and we just had to adjust like that. New school, new everything. We all moved away from our friends, our life that we knew. Even though our home life was shit, we all had like really good friendship supports and family support down there. Whereas moving up there, because we didn't have a lot of access, and my dad didn't get a lot of access, and we didn't spend a lot of time with him, it was just this whole new world that we got opened up to all of a sudden, and we had to adjust to it straight away.
Has your dad ever talked to you about how it affected him, the court processes? Was there significant things that sort of put him down?
We had a really good conversation maybe 18 months ago.
Yep.
I found out a lot of stuff because I opened up to him.
He opened up too?
About my relationship with my mum.
Yep.
And just said, look, I've completely cut her out of my life.
Yep.
And, you know, he was like, well, you know, this is what I went through at the time. And he really, really struggled with the fact that he would drive so far to see us, and it would be every second weekend, so it's not a lot of access that he had. And because he was driving from Toowoomba, he'd spend 5 hours driving down and back. Sometimes he would have us. Most of the time he wouldn't have us. He would get down, and he said sometimes he would sit outside our house and wait for hours until to see if we would show up. He would wait all day. We wouldn't show up. He said that really affected him, and even my stepmom chimed in and said that he really, really struggled with it at the time and was very close to suicide. Which, like, to hear that from his perspective, knowing that I didn't get a lot of time with him, and I felt really selfish, and I feel really guilty about this, but when he used to come down and I'd see him, like when I was 13, 14, and he would show up and we would actually be there, I wouldn't want to go with him because I would rather go and hang out with my friends.
Yeah, okay.
And the weekend was the time that I would go and hang out with my friends, and I wouldn't be at home because I'd be out with my mates the whole time. And if I went up with him, that would take me away from my friends, not realizing that it might have been 4 or 5 weekends that he hasn't seen me or spent time with us.
Since you've had that conversation with your old boy, looking back now, does that bring up any like emotions or?
Yeah, I've dealt with a lot of shit over the years, just with what's happened with my mum, and then finding that out about my dad as well. I've dealt with a lot of guilt over the years, and especially like cutting off my mum in the last 18 months. I did feel a lot of guilt for a lot of years with that decision, because I struggled with that for a long time. Only because they're your parents, you know, like you shouldn't ever have to cut your parents off. And for me, with my dad, looking back on how it was when I was 13, 14, I can't believe how selfish I was, you know. I didn't realise.
You didn't realise at the time.
Yeah, but it doesn't change what an asshole I was, you know.
Yeah, of course. Since you've become a mother, parent yourself, and I can speak on behalf for me, obviously there's things that I look back now, like I viewed life in general differently but then when you become a parent, you obviously view things a lot differently and you have different emotions. Like now that you're a parent now, do you look back and think, do you view stuff differently? You know? Yeah.
I've gone through a separation myself recently as well. So end of last year, my marriage broke down as well. And it's really, really put things into perspective on how I want to keep a working relationship with my ex-husband. I know what I went through when my mum and dad separated. I know how hard that was when I was a kid, growing up with that, knowing.
You don't want to pass that down.
No. And we were living in a really angry household because my mum, because she was so focused on what she could get from my dad and how she could use us as a pawn to make him suffer or to pay her money. All I remember is her constantly ringing him up and just yelling and abusing him on the phone. And I don't ever want my kids to be around that. I don't ever want my kids to see us fight. I don't ever want my kids to feel that hurt and to see us fighting over them.
Yeah.
Because I don't want them to feel like our separation has got anything to do with them, because it doesn't.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, every kid needs a mum and a dad in their life.
Yeah, I agree, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's good that you're not passing that down and that you remember what life was like growing up and you don't... I assume there was a split amicable between you and your ex?
Yeah. I mean, as amicable as it gets.
But you're definitely not doing what the whole drama was like for you growing up, you know what I mean? Yeah. In the family court that when I went through it, the family court is supposed to be about what's best for the children, and they say that it's important for the father to get bonding time to build a relationship. Now, my daughter was, we broke up when she was 6 months and I fought up until she was 3.5. Now, how can I build a relationship with my daughter when at one point I was only getting her 1 hour on a Sunday and I had to get 2 hours every, second weekend, second Saturday, Sunday, then 3 hours? Like, I had this routine that as soon as I picked her up, I sung the same song. I was trying to create that muscle memory, and it'd be the same, either Old MacDonald had a farm or the wheels on the bus. And she's high-level autistic. She's a very smart girl. But I'd sing the same song. And it was just like this comfort thing. She'd lean in because she has sensory processing as well. She'd lean in and she'd just rub my my ears. So me and my mum we try and keep the same pattern, the same routine. But then the next fortnight, she'd cancel. And I was living in Blackbutt at the time, which is out near Kilcoy, Kingaroy, and it took me 2.5 hours to drive from there because I had to go supervision on the Gold Coast. So I'd drive down like your father did. I'd drive 2.5 hours there. My parents live in Ipswich. They would drive an hour and a bit from Ipswich to Gold Coast, and we'd get there only to get told, she's just caught up. They say they're sick. They'll go to a doctor tomorrow, next week, and get a doctor's certificate. It's just so gut wrenching. That time is being damaged from me trying to build a rapport and a relationship. I think in that first 12 months that we split, I had my daughter for 49 hours that year. It was 52 weeks, so that's less than an hour a week,
Yep.
So where I'm going with that was the relationship damage with your father. Obviously, seeing you guys for limited time, living far away, been cancelled on. Mm-hmm. And how has that affected you today? Like, how's your relationship now? Is it stronger?
We're definitely working on it. It's definitely not where it should be, it's definitely not where it should be, you know. If I had that time with my dad and even every second weekend, that's like nothing.
Yeah, I know, right?
Especially when you factor in travel time as well, when you're driving in a car, you know. I mean, it's still time that we were spending together, but like it's still nothing, you know. By the time I got to 13, 14, because I hadn't had that time with him, I wanted to spend time with my friends. Yeah. You know, I didn't want to go and see my dad. It ended up turning into like this really, and I feel like such an asshole, and I was an asshole when I was that age because I didn't want to go and see him. I didn't want to spend time with him. I didn't want to have anything to do with him because I hadn't had that bond and that connection built, created when I was a kid because I wasn't able to spend any time with him. That time got taken away. I didn't know what was going on when I was a kid. I just saw it as we were visiting family all the time and, you know, we were hanging out with cousins and aunties and uncles and I was having a great time with them, not knowing that my dad was sitting at my house waiting for us to come home, you know, to get his visitation. Yeah. Then, like I said, when I was like 18, as soon as I could, I moved out of house. Yeah. And I went black for a lot of years. You know, I didn't have any contact with any of my family. I didn't have any contact with my siblings. I didn't have any contact with anyone. And, yeah, it's probably only been in the last maybe 10 years that I've really started to try and make amends for that because, you know, you always get a choice in life on what sort of path you want to take. And I took a path where I didn't want to have anything to do with my family, which, you know, was not just rough on me, it was rough on them as well. And I've only found that out in the last few years. And, you know, my dad worried about me a lot during those years because I wouldn't talk to them. I wouldn't pick up my phone. I wouldn't have any contact with them at all for years.
What was life like for Ella, 18, like when you moved out on your own? Looking back now, was there a lot of hate, a lot of anger, maybe depression? What did that come from the household that you were brought up in? Yeah.
Worked in hospitality for a lot of years.
So where did you, sorry to cut you off, where did you say you're 18, you moved out? Where did you move to from there?
So I stayed in Toowoomba.
Toowoomba, yep.
Worked in hospitality.
Pubs
in
and that?
Toowoomba for a while, yeah. Classic 18-year-old, got into the party scene, didn't...
Well, they call it Toowoomba T-bar? They call it T-bar?
Yeah.
What's life like in Toowoomba?
I mean, but when I was 17, it was so lax. I could get into clubs when I was 17. So I was clubbing when I was underage. And I think that didn't help with where I was heading in life. Yep. And, yeah, it wasn't long until I moved down to Brisbane for a bit and then moved on to the Goldie. And, yeah, you know, like a lot of those years... Yeah, I just spent partying and working in hospitality and... So
you moved out, you in Toowoomba for a year post 18, then moved down to Brizzy?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then just maintained hospitality.
Yep.
And Brizzy for what, another year or so?
Yep.
Then moved to Goldie, God's country?
Yep.
Settled in here?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then what did you do there? Just maintain hospitality?
Yeah. So I met my ex-husband now in Toowoomba. So he ran a club in Toowoomba, and that's how we met. And then...
Oh, wait, what year did you meet your ex-husband? When you had moved to Goldie, or you'd met him when you were in Toowoomba?
Yep. So he ran a pub up in Toowoomba. That's where we met. And then it wasn't a real healthy time, not a real healthy relationship, and very up and down. Moved to Brisbane because we separated for a bit. He followed me down. Then we decided we were going to live on the Goldie and, stayed working in hospitality there. Decided, you know, we wanted to stay together, have kids. Yep. Probably was like maybe 4 or 5 years after that, I got pregnant. And yeah.
So how old were you at the time then? But 25? No, 20.
So I had him when I was 26, and
Yep.
then 2 years later had my daughter.
Just supported. What was life like then? Like you had your first son. How was that as a mum? Pretty cool. Pretty
Yeah, it was,
surreal.
but that was probably the time when all of this childhood stuff bubbled up.
Yeah, like trauma, you reckon?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was when I really, really struggled, especially with my relationship with my mum.
Was there a lot of anger brought up
Yeah.
then? Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
And I think that's probably why I got into the party scene. I got into a lot of drugs at the time.
Like a Band-Aid? Was it?
Yeah.
Band-Aid the
So
pain.
I was quite numb for a lot of years.
That's right. Take your time.
Smoked a lot of weed during those years.
Yep.
Spent day in, day out stoned a lot.
Yep.
And then, nighttime, was hitting everything else. And, I think that was just because it was like an excuse for me to not have to answer the phone to people. And, if I was like, oh man, if I'm really wasted, I don't have to talk to anyone.
Yep.
I think that's probably why my dad was really worried about me, because he would see me, because he lived in Toowoomba at the time,
Yep.
and he would see me every now and again. And he said I just looked like a rake, I looked like a shell of myself.
Yeah.
And yeah, like I said, it wasn't until I had my son when I realised how much all of those years affected me and how she treated us.
Was it a feeling like now that you've got your first son, your first son, was it like, how could you have done that to us type thing?
Yeah.
Seeing that you've got this love for your first son, your child, and you're thinking, oh, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but was it like, how could you have done that to us? Like,
And
could
I
you
was
could have done
also,
to you?
because she knew that I'd had him, I was also waiting for her.
To reach out?
Yes.
Did she reach out?
She did, but she also didn't respect anything that I asked of her either. So, she's got this really good way of being able to
Manipulate?
to make out like she's doing the right thing, but then not following boundaries that you set, and then using that as a way to attack you and say, oh, well, she doesn't want to have anything to do with me anyway. Like, as soon as we got kicked out when we were 16, when I was 16, I was blamed for that because I was the rebellious teenager. So I was the black sheep of the family. I was the reason why me and my siblings were kicked out of the house, and that's the narrative that my family followed. So then when I'd had him, I said to her, because she came down to the hospital and I hadn't seen her for a long time. She came and saw us in the hospital, and it was good. And then I said to her, and I said to everybody in the room, I said, look, when I get home, give me a week, let me settle in with him, and then come down and see me, spend time with us, whatever. And I was excited because I thought she'd see this as a second chance to make it up for how she was when I was little. I was like, maybe she sees this as a way of getting better. Literally the next day when I got home from hospital, she knocks on the door.
Oh, wow.
And I'm holding him in my arms, and I said to her, I told you to stay away for a week. And I was really angry at the time, and I don't know, a flaw of mine is to probably be a little too blunt with people, but I told her, I said, I can't have you in the house. I don't want you here for a week. She'd also driven a long way to come from where she was to come and see me on the Gold Coast, but she also didn't respect what I asked. So, and I didn't owe her anything either. So, and I know that sounds really harsh, and
she was getting a little bit of her own medicine. She drove all that way, like your dad used to. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I haven't thought about it like that.
Yeah, so maybe that was a wake-up call for, well, maybe there was some guilt for her, maybe think, shit.
Yeah.
Your father used to do this all the time. And
I'd like to think she'd have that kind of insight, but I don't think. Yeah.
I remember when my daughter was born, I used to be paranoid about everything. Like first time parenting, like, oh, do this, do that. Something, she's coughing, shit, what's happening?
Yeah.
What was that like, first time parenting?
Yeah. So, I guess because obviously I didn't have her, and I wasn't super close with my dad. Although I was trying to rebuild that bridge with him and also my stepmom, because I was an asshole to her. I was an asshole to both of them. When I moved up to Toowoomba and I got forced to move up there, I was the worst person ever.
Yep.
And I really made them suffer.
Yep.
So I was really trying to rebuild those relationships. And I saw my son as a way of kind of making that happen. But yeah, it was really hard for me because I didn't have the support of grandparents really. And obviously I had my husband there at the time, but you know, he's the breadwinner. So yeah, I didn't really have, you know, a lot of people to lean on, and I was.
Did you have much support network down here on Goldie when you had your kids? No, just you and your husband?
We had friends like.
No direct family.
No. And a lot of the people that I was close with were like people that we used to party with. So yeah. So like they didn't really have kids, and it was
not the ideal babysitters.
Yeah, exactly. So it was just kind of like I'd had him, and I was lucky enough. Like one of our other friends had a baby around the same time, so I kind of leaned on them a little bit, but I still did feel very much alone because even they had a lot of parental support, which I didn't have. And you know, like my stepsisters now, they've both had kids, and it's really nice to see like my dad's taking a really active role in their children. Beautiful. Which, you know, I really, really wish that he'd had with my kids. But yeah, you know, I can see why, you know, it hasn't happened and it didn't happen at the time.
Yeah, okay.
Because he was scarred, obviously, from driving 2.5 hours, spending an entire day waiting for us to come home. You know, he was scarred from that. He doesn't want to have to put himself through that again. So I could see why he did his best as and does his best as a grandpa, but like, you know, that bridge was burned, you know?
Yeah. So at what point do you get married? Was it before?
No. So we weren't married when I had my son. So I had him, and then he was 6 months old, and we got married then.
Yeah, cool. Where'd you get married?
On the Goldie.
On the Goldie.
Yeah, we were meant to have a beach wedding, but
it rained.
It ended up, yeah. It was like fucking storming hardcore.
Let me guess, it was sunny the day before too.
Yeah. And anyway, it all worked out. But yeah, he was 6 months old at the time. Wasn't a real traditional wedding. It was just a bunch of people getting together and celebrating. It was a nice time.
So what was life like then? Pretty good, like happy family. You had your son.
I did. Like I said, just the thing I missed out on was just that parental or grandparent support. So, and I was trying to build a relationship with her because I really, really struggled at the time, knowing whose fault what was when I was growing up. I looked back on how I was as a teenager, and I was blaming myself for what had happened to us as kids. And I was believing the narrative that, you know, what Mum was saying, that I was the black sheep and I caused everything. And I was the reason why we got kicked out of home, and I was the reason why she was an alcoholic, and everything I did was the reason why she was the way she was. So because I had that narrative going on in my mind, I was really motivated to try and have a relationship with her after I'd had my son. When she showed up on my doorstep on that first day, that shit me off. And then I was just kind of like, all right.
Set the mood.
Yeah. So then I was like, all right, she's just keen to see him. I get that. So I was making excuses then. I was really, really trying to have some kind of working grandparenting relationship with her. You know, I slowly started to remember as I was around her a little bit more what her personality is like and how she is and how emotionally taxing and manipulative she can be, and how she always made everything feel like I still needed to take care of her. And you know, she was meant to be there to spend time with her grandson and bond with him when, she was just making me feel like I had to take care of her and build a relationship with her.
Has she got BPD or bipolar or anything?
I've always suspected, and so does my sister, that she's got bipolar because when we were kids, like I said, she would be drinking as soon as she got home and it would only take say my brother and I arguing about who's going to do the dishes, to set her off and to just go into my brother's bedroom and grab a suitcase and go, right, you're moving up to your dad's, and would just throw all these clothes into this suitcase. And he would be screaming at her, no, Mum, I don't want to go. And it was fucked, you know? And she's like getting off on this fucking drama, and she's packing all his shit, and then she throws it outside and she's like, you're going up to your dad's, I'm ringing your dad now. And like my brother would just be like, please, Mum, don't make me leave. And we'd all be screaming at her, and it would just be this constant chaos at home, you know? And
then was she saying, no, I don't want you to go, and telling you, so this up and down emotional roller coaster.
Like even that very last day when she kicked us out, he showed up. And then she put my dad back. Showed up, and she was like out on the lawn crying to us, going, I don't want you guys to go. This is not my fault. Please don't leave. Like begging for us to stay. And then she was ringing us for the next week afterwards. Like it's not an environment
healthy
for any kid.
Nah,
you know?
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
So life for you, when do you get into BJJ?
When I was 30.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So you had your first son, then you had later on your first daughter.
Yep.
Is that right?
Yep.
How old were you then? Probably 27, 28?
Yeah, I would have been 28 when 28? I had her. Yeah.
Living on the Gold Coast with your husband. Yeah. Working. Law school. What made you get in? And then what? A couple of years later, get into BJJ.
Yeah. So we were living on the Goldie. We owned a house in Ashmore. We were doing really well because he was building boats and I was doing the admin stuff. Yeah. Where was he doing that? Cooma at the port? What's it called?
He
Cooma was Riviera and then Maritimo. He worked for a bit.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So we did that for a bit, and then the GFC hit. And
that's right. Yeah. Was that 2008?
2008. Yeah.
That's right. And so, I remember because I was in the army. We all got that payment, that $800, $900 payment.
Yeah. So
that was big money then.
We went through a really rough time. So we made the decision to just cut ties, sell the house. We moved up to Mackay.
Oh yeah. Was the decision making choosing Mackay
with the GFC because luxury items just tanked. Yeah. So luxury boats just tanked hard. So there was mass firings where my ex-husband was working. So unfortunately, he ended up losing his job. He was lucky enough to have a contact with his cousin who just moved up to Mackay. Well, it was a big mining boom at the time, but he was actually a painter. Yep. So because the mining boom was happening, there was a lot of housing development going on as well. So he offered him a job and he just learned on the fly and just went up, winged it. And
no cuff too tough.
Yeah, exactly. So we did that when we moved up there and then stayed up there for a few years and then sold up, and then same thing, came down when the housing boom was happening here and followed the work and that's how we ended up back down here.
Yeah, cool. So how many years were you up there for, sorry?
I think it was like 5 years we were up there.
What was life like in Mackay? Hot?
We were really lucky because we did so well with the painting business. And like his cousin set us up really, really well to where he was able to work as a subcontractor and we were able to start our own business there. So we did really well when we were up there because there was so much money up there at the time. We were able to save really hard and buy a house really quickly while we were up there. Yep. So it was a really good life. We had a beautiful home. It was right near the beach.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah, we had 2 young kids. I ended up working again, so I got a job at the gym because I started bodybuilding at the time. Yep. So I got into that for a while, got a job at the gym and I was personal training, and then we set up our own gym at our house. Yep. So I was seeing clients at the house and then worked in the bodybuilding scene for a while. Yep. And then, when I was working in a supplement store, that's when the guy who ran the jiu-jitsu club came into the shop and was like, oh, man, you should start jiu-jitsu. And I was like, oh, I don't even know what that is. And then, did my first class. And then from that second on was just
loved it. Yeah. So you started in Mackay, the BJJ.
Yep.
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 You moved down to Goldie back 5 years later. So how long have you been doing BJJ for then before you moved to Goldie?
Well, up there.
Up there?
would have been, I just got my blue belt, so it would have been like just over 2 years, I reckon.
For the listeners at home, including myself, how did the belts work? What colour you start off at? White?
So you start white and then blue, purple, brown, black.
Black.
Yeah. So you spend on average like 2 years on each belt, given the fact that you don't get injured, which I've been injured a lot.
I could imagine.
Yeah.
How does the grading work? So, like, is there like a senior person that's the, like, I don't know what you call it, the master or some shit? Like,
Yeah,
you know,
professor.
Professor, is that the terminology? Professor?
Yeah.
And like, are there scheduled dates like, right, you need to, do they just spring it on you? Like, oh, you did something that I believe you get promoted, or do you have to sit like a test?
So every club runs it differently. So the way our club runs it is we've got a syllabus that we run by, and then, you know, every few months there's a grading, and then as a student you just learn whatever you've got to learn.
Yep.
And obviously when your professor thinks that you're ready, he'll be like, all right, I'm going to invite you to grading, and you come in and you do your test on the day, and then you're given your promotion.
Yeah.
But
okay.
every club runs it differently. Like some clubs just run it where they'll be given out. So for every promotion, you're given a stripe on your belt. So by the time you get 4 stripes on your belt, that's when you can be promoted to a new colour.
When you start off on white belt, you need to get 4 stripes on your white belt before you get to, what's the next one, sorry?
Blue belt.
Blue belt. And then same again, you need to get 4 stripes, and then, okay, I got you.
Yeah, so that's why it can take a couple of years before you get promoted.
What's it mean when, I think I heard someone say on Joe Rogan's podcast, he's 10th generation black belt? What does that mean?
So that'd be like every time they're given a stripe, it'd be like a dance. So it's like, you know, your first stripes get given within 12 months, I think, of your black belt. And then I can't remember the progression, but it's like 1 year after that, then 3 years after that, then 5 years, then 7 years. And then that's when you progress and get more.
Because obviously that's as high as you go black, so then he just keeps getting stripes?
So what happens is you reach a certain level on your black, and then you'll get what's called a coral belt, which is like the red and white belt. Then after that, there's, I think it's red belt, and I don't know. I'll never get that high.
Okay. And I've never done one BJJ class in my life. I watch UFC and the interviews, and I think it's Khabib or someone was saying, you know, Poirier shouldn't have his black belt because, I don't know. So what's all that drama about? Like, you know, they're saying, he's because I think Poirier's black belt, but you got other guys saying, no, he's not black belt, he should be purple. Or what? Is that just their opinion, or is there stuff going on behind closed doors?
See, that's like, because there's no official or international governing body like with judo, there's like an international, like that's why it's in the Olympics.
Yeah, okay.
Like jiu-jitsu is just every club and every professor has got the discretion to be able to run their classes and their promotion system the way they want to.
Yep.
So I guess like some MMA fighters, while they don't do a lot of jiu-jitsu, a lot of professors like to get in the cage and like, oh yeah, I'm going to give this guy his brown belt today or his black belt today, when maybe he's only done, I don't know, 6 months worth of classes or something.
Okay.
But it's only because maybe it looks good for their brand.
Okay.
But,
yeah. When you progressed to blue, was it when you moved down to Goldie?
No, so I got my blue belt up there.
Yep.
Because I was really motivated. Once I started training, when I do something, I'd try and do something
dedicated,
like 1,000%.
focused.
Yeah. I said to, like, within 6 months of training, I was like, man, I want to have an MMA fight. And my professor was like, all right, well, if you want to have an MMA fight, you got to show me that you're dedicated, and you got to be with me for a couple of years, and you're not going to get an MMA fight. I'm not going to get you one until you get your blue belt. And I was like, okay, all right, let's knuckle down.
There's your incentive,
Yeah, that was when I just went like full spastic. You know, I did jiu-jitsu. I was seeing a Muay Thai trainer. I went like full on training, got out of the bodybuilding scene, went straight into fighting. My kids were really young at the time, and I did spend a lot of time training, and did my MMA fight, got my blue belt, and then not long after that moved down here.
Yeah, cool. What's some of the injuries you've taken on during the jiu-jitsu's years? A lot of pulls and strains?
Yeah.
The dislocations, I think?
So both my knees.
Here we go.
I've had full ACL reconstructions in both knees.
Is that from jiu-jitsu?
Yeah.
So is that from someone like pulling it out of the, like How does that work? Like you see it on the rugby field,
actually
right?
nothing real spectacular. So my first ACL got blown when somebody was just attempting a takedown and I just twisted on my knee wrong. Felt like this pop.
And is it painful at the start, then it goes away?
Yeah,
because I hear the NRL players say that.
Yeah. So I was like, oh, fuck, that didn't feel good. And then it was kind of like I kept training, but it kept on like subluxing, I think they call it. And I was like, oh, man, that doesn't feel good. And I went to the doctor. He like felt the laxity in my knee and he's like, everything's fine. Kept training. It kept on shifting. And I was like, man, this isn't right.
Doesn't feel right. Went
and got an MRI done and the doctor's like, man, I'm really surprised, but you got no ACL. And I'm like, oh, awesome. So back when that happened, like now they do more conservative management where they try and get you to rehab it before surgery. But
that's right.
This was like, I don't know, 12 years. Oh, not that long. Maybe like 8 years ago now. And like straight up, the doctor was like, look, if you want to keep performing in your sport, you have to go and get the surgery done. So that was when I got my right knee done. After that, I broke my ankle.
Yep. How'd you do that? Jiu-jitsu?
Yeah.
Yep.
Same thing. Someone was throwing me. So he threw me once and bang, landed on the floor. And I was like, yeah. And like, I think he was like, oh, fuck, I'm really sorry. I'm like, I'm fine. I break forward. I'm all good. So the second time he went for the throw, he didn't commit to it 100%. So my foot got like stuck in the mat and it ended up like twisting. And when we both ended up like falling on top of my ankle and it just went and I was like, oh, that doesn't feel good. And went to stand on it and it just felt like jelly. And I was like, all right, I think I need to get to the hospital. And had a fracture in like the bottom of my tibia.
Yep.
So that had to get plated.
Yeah,
probably
ACL.
18 months ago. Yeah, so this knee, my left knee is like the worst injury I've ever had. So this happened in competition because I compete a lot.
Yep.
This happened in competition. I've competed ever since I started at white belt all the way through to brown. Never had an injury in competition. She ended up coming down sideways on my knee. So I felt like 2 pops and I was like, oh, it's not 1, it's 2 this time. And same thing, the physio took me off. He was like, oh, yeah, your knee feels really strong. I can't see that you've got any damage in there. Don't ever believe what a physio says. Always go and get an MRI. Yeah. They don't know what, like...
They can't see it. I say, but just doctors, they can't see it. So go get an MRI X-ray.
Yeah, exactly.
You
have to go and get an MRI. And especially like if you're an athlete and you got a lot of muscle in your leg, it's always going to feel strong. There's not going to be a lot of laxity there. So I got the MRI done. ACL was gone. I had a MCL tear and my meniscus was also 2/3 torn. So I think they call it the terrible triad. Yeah. So had to go and get that operated on. Wouldn't have been any good with any conservative management because the 3 ligaments were damaged. But the good thing about the surgery was because they stitched together my meniscus and also reconstructed the ACL, it promoted a lot of blood flow to the area. So it's meant to enhance the healing. But I'm 18 months out and I'm still rehabbing it.
Do you lose a lot of confidence trying to get back into training again and competing?
Yeah. So I haven't competed again yet. My goal was after the injury to be 12 months out and do a competition. It's been 18 months now. So 2025, I'm going to be back on the competition mat. But, I'm still like rehabbing hard.
What's the rules of jiu-jitsu? Like, guys will get in the ring, they'll spar. But when jiu-jitsu, like, is it what, you go at 70%? Is it like a sort of rule of thumb when you're...
You mean on the training mat?
Yeah, on the training mat, yeah.
Yeah, so it's hard in the beginning to have control because you don't know what you're doing. So you always know when you roll it like a white belt that it's going to be a bit of controlled chaos. And as a higher belt, you want to try and control that chaos.
Yeah.
A lot of it relies on... having the confidence to effectively communicate with your training partner as well, which when you're starting out new and especially as a female, that's hard to do.
Yep.
So that's probably what results in a lot of people not sticking it out because they can't effectively or they don't have the skills or the confidence to be able to communicate to a training partner, hey, I feel like you're going too hard, or hey, can you show me what you did here, or whatever, you know. So the key to being successful in jiu-jitsu is just having the confidence to be able to communicate with a partner and say to them, hey, can you help me out here, or hey, can you calm it down, or whatever. It depends. Like if you're warming up for a competition, same thing. You want to communicate to your partner, hey, I'm looking at competing. Can we run at like 80 to 90%?
Yeah.
You don't just want to go into a role and like have this intention of fucking someone up when they're going into it going, oh, I'm just going to chill and have like a 50 to 60% chill roll. So I always communicate my intentions to my partner and make sure that I let them know, hey, I'm looking to compete. This is what's going to happen. I want to start from the feet. We're going to work on takedowns, and then whoever gets the sub, you know, wins the role or whatever, you know.
Has there ever been scenarios or events where, like, you know, I'll watch YouTube videos where guys are sparring but someone's, you know, throwing a punch too hard and the next thing it just blows up, you know, and then they're punching on any scenarios like that? Someone's taking a little bit too far and it's just blown out of control?
Like, we don't typically strike when we're rolling, like, unless...
Someone's throwing someone on the ground a bit too hard or something, or no?
Yeah, like, we've had rolling sessions where, like, there's been the caveat of, okay, we're going to slap each other while we're rolling, because that can really change...
the tempo, the energy.
Yeah, it changes the pace of how you roll. Like, someone, for instance, could have a really good bottom game, which is like a guard game.
Yep.
But if you start slapping him in the face... It all falls to
Throws
water,
them out.
you know? Yeah. I don't know. Like, most of the time when you're rolling someone, like, I haven't had it happen where someone's just lost their shit and gone crazy on me, but I have seen it happen and I've heard it happen. But then a lot of the time you've got someone on the mat that's like the mat enforcer. So, you know, if somebody smaller gets beaten up by somebody that's bigger and more powerful and that just uses all their strength when they don't need to, like, yeah, a lot of the time it'll be someone like the mat enforcer that'll come in and sort them out.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
We went down the jiu-jitsu tunnel then. So coming back, so you get your blue belt at Mackay, then you move to Goldie?
Yep.
So you move back down to Goldie. What's happening there? You go back into work down here somewhere? What's the work situation?
So what did I do for work? I went back to hospitality for a bit, actually.
Yep.
But was different. I wasn't partying then. I had my kids, was working hospitality and just trying to help us out with a second income.
What's the hubby at the time doing?
He was still painting.
Yep.
He was really lucky to be able to just transfer the business from Mackay and come down here and keep working. So, yeah, it worked out really well. But then just with the way work was with hospitality, it was hard for us because, you know, he would come home from work and I would literally be leaving the same, like as soon as he would get home, I'd be out the door. So we were hardly seeing each other. So then I decided to get into learning my trade.
Yep.
So then I started working for us for a bit and ended up getting my trade as a painter and decorator.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah. So I did that for a few years and then, yeah, I was down rolling one night down at our Miami club.
Yep.
And just
is that the one next to
mention,
the RMC?
Yeah,
I'll go there sometimes. The RMC of it. Yeah, I'll see it next door. Yeah.
So they give us a good discount in
there.
there. It's awesome in there. So I was down there rolling one night and I just happened to mention to the head professor, I was like, oh, man, my dream would be to, like, run a jiu-jitsu club one day. And he was like, well, just so happens that we need someone to run Bean Lee. Like, it's a big club, but they just didn't have anyone full-time there to run it. So I was like, oh, man, I'd love to do that. And, yeah, it just sort of everything fell into place and then I was able to start running that place. So I ended up leaving. I didn't leave us full-time. So I did occasional work for our business here and there, but my main focus was then switched to running the club in Beanley.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Do you have a third child? Do you?
No, so I've got my ex-husband has got a daughter, so I consider her my kid as well, but she's older.
Yeah, okay, yep. So you got the two kids.
Yep.
What level are you at now when you go to Beanley?
When I started down here, they were in Yatla.
Yep.
And I was a blue belt. And then they opened the Beanley Club, and I'm pretty sure it wasn't long after that I got my purple.
Yep.
And then that's when I started taking, at the time I was like helping out teaching the kids classes, and then I would run a ladies class on a Saturday. And then, not long after that, I got my brown, and that was when I started managing the club full time.
Mad.
Yeah, it's good.
You enjoy it?
It was good. Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
And how often do you do that now? Oh, you're still there now, obviously?
Yeah, I'm still there, but just as a result of my marriage breakdown, being a single mum, got a lot of bills to pay.
Yeah.
So I was really, really lucky. So I know a lot of good people in the jiu-jitsu community, and those people work at the hospital as well.
Yeah.
So, I had a lot of connections through that, and they were able to refer me on to apply for the job there.
Yep.
So that's literally getting the job there is what saved me in the last 6 months. It's been one of the best things ever. Like the money, the security, the people that we work with, like it's an awesome environment. Yeah.
If you don't mind me touching on, and you don't have to talk about it, but I just thought with your split with your marriage, again, you don't have to answer. I just thought, obviously, because you'd seen it happen with your parents, your split. How was that different to watching your parents split? Obviously, it would have been hard. Like, how long were you guys married for?
We were married for 15 years.
15 years, yeah.
Yeah, and we were together for 20 years.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, so, it was hard at the time, and I was really proud of having a relationship.
Yeah, I've only been with someone 2 years. 20 years, that's a long time.
Yeah, so it was a huge thing for me, and like, it was hard. It probably could have happened maybe 6 months before that, but I was always like super motivated to not turn into my mother, and that was probably a big driving force, and that's not the right way like any relationship should carry on. I was always really motivated to make sure that whatever happened between him and I, it would never affect the kids.
That's a good way to look at it.
Yeah. So like he and I could hate each other and hate each other's guts, but that's got nothing to do with access and I don't own my children.
Yep.
At the end of and like when we split, my kids were teenagers anyway, so they were old enough to make their own decisions and think for themselves and speak for themselves anyway. But I think as a parent, you can't look at your children like property. And a lot of parents do
that.
They look at their kids like property, and they use them to manipulate their ex-partners to get what they want. And it's not healthy for your children. It's not healthy for the environment that you're bringing them up in. Yeah.
What's your situation now with your ex, as in like with the kids? Is it sort of like 50-50? Is it every second it's 50-50?
Yep. Yeah. Yep. So we've got a really good working relationship.
And that's awesome. I respect that, because the look that I get and other fathers get, you go to court and they ask you, what do you want? I said 50-50. They look at you like you're psycho.
Yeah.
They're like, how dare you ask that?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just crazy. I'm like, aren't I entitled to see my daughter like half the time? And one of my lawyers actually said it's very hard to get, unless the mother agrees, it's very hard to get 50-50. And it's just so crazy. Like,
and I would love to know the thought process behind that. Like,
so do I.
Yeah.
Like I got told, I remember when I first I filed paperwork to go, I filed the paperwork to go to family court. My
dad was the same. He was the one that pushed the legal process because he wasn't able to communicate at all with her.
And I thought, oh, well, I'm going to file this. Like, the court's going to help me out here. They did not help me at all. They made it worse. And I filed it. I remember clear as day, my lawyer said, listen, once you file this paperwork, there's no turning back. I said, yeah, of course. He goes, no, like once you file, you can't just walk away. I said, yeah, of course. I want to see my daughter. He said, listen, this is not going to make sense. And it doesn't make sense, but I need to tell you this. He goes, I know you're a veteran, you work full time, you work for Australia Border Force, you don't have a criminal record, but you're going to be behind the 8 ball from the get-go. I said, how? He goes, I haven't done anything wrong. He said, because you're a father. I was like, what? But then when you're in the driving seat, your state of mind's different. It's like, well, I haven't done anything wrong. I don't care what you say.
Yep.
Of course, once you get in there, then boom, all these allegations, all this comes out. from the whole time I was behind the 8 ball.
Yep.
You know, and I don't know, it's gone that story, but
I think it's like because you shared that YouTube clip with who's the lady that was talking?
The most recent one?
Yeah.
Bettina Art.
Yeah.
She's coming on. I just called her She called me yesterday.
So watching that, I was really, really, it was really, really shocking to see how, and I don't want to blanket all women with this, but it's really, really shocking and really disappointing to see that women can use this Me Too movement and, you know, how easy it is for a female to take out a DVO against the next for something as innocuous as like raising a hand towards them, like.
And yeah, that's right. Like
and it's like they might be raising a hand to just like they're upset and not raising a hand to hit. I mean just raising a hand because they're emotional and you know, animated at the time. You know,
my lawyer gave a perfect example. If I put that aircon remote too high for you to reach, form of DV. Like everything's a form of DV.
Yeah.
And those two current cops that's in that news article, obviously they had to blanket their name.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. I'm never going to be able to get a current cop on this podcast because they'll lose their job. But I've got 2 ex-coppers that are coming on in Jan, and obviously they're more than happy to speak out about it. And the DV system is in place for real DV. I get that, but there's a lot of people manipulating that system. I'll give you a perfect example. We'll get out of the whole DV train. We'll talk military. Those guys that go to Kapuka, they've done 2 weeks and they're claiming PTSD because they want to get on that money train.
Yep.
But you know, so there's systems all around that people are going to jump on and manipulate.
Yep.
And this is the perfect example, but it's just like the father that I had on the other day, he used the police. There's a terminology that I heard, which I hadn't heard before. It's called a cop shopper. And this is what the police said to him. He said, mate, we've knocked back your ex. She tried to put a DV on you. We said no. She went to the next police station. She said no. She went to the 3rd police station. She said no. Went to the 4th, and they called that a cop shopper. So she got knocked back at 4 police stations. So she goes to get a DV delegate from the whatever they call DV team. She comes back. They hold her hand, say DV, and they put a DV on this person. You know, and I think with my time dealing with police over the years, there's been police that I've talked to and they see it for what it is, like, oh mate, this is ridiculous. Like, but then you might get a police officer fresh out of recruit school, like, oh nah, this is it, DV. You know, so
I think with the new laws that have come in too, it just makes it that much more murky for police too, with coercive control and that's like honestly, I don't know how the hell you police that. You know, like it's such a grey area. You know, and like how do you actually prove and show evidence of coercive control? Like, you know, any stay-at-home mum could say that they're coercively controlled because they don't have an income coming in. It would be very easy for and you know, I'm not trying to like shit on women right now, but it would be very easy for a stay-at-home mum to have financial proof that, oh, you know, I'm a stay-at-home mum. He was coercively controlled the whole time. He had financial control over everything that we did, over everything we earned. It's messy.
My ex tried to pull the financial control. And I had a female judge in the DV trial, and I thought, oh, here we go. But thank God she saw it for what it is. But, you know, financial control, I wasn't drip feeding her $200 a week control. It was she wanted a car, bought a car. You know, when we split, she wanted a place. I paid $42,000 up front. 12 months. I wasn't drip feeding the rent fortnightly. And the judge said, well, he's not controlling you. He's paid 12 months rent up front. He's given that to you. You know? So
but see, that's where it can get murky and messy, I think, because she's got care responsibilities for the kids and is unable to work, or any woman that's a stay-at-home mum is unable to work, and the dad is the breadwinner. It would be very easy for a woman, if she wanted to turn on the ex-husband and be like, well, he had full financial control over everything we did for our family. He was coercively controlling, you know, and get charges that way.
I think,
you know,
like,
if she wanted to, you know.
I think, I wouldn't say, like, unfortunately, I had to take it to trial to prove it. You know, some people can't afford that, you know, and so they just, you could rock up to the court day, you got 10 minutes to say something, like, oh, no, you know, so I had to take it to trial and people had to get cross-examined. when you put a DV on someone, she was entitled to women's legal service, not legal aid. They have a separate funding. And she was using government-funded barristers against me. And my barrister would talk to her government-funded barristers that we were paying for and would, do the little meeting before, like, are you sure you want to go through this? Because you're wasting your time. And my barrister would come out every time, like, man, I'm so sorry, like, that we have to go here because I don't know what they think they have.
Yeah.
Because all they had was hearsay allegations.
Yep.
I'm the one with the CCTV footage of her belting me, the Uber footage of her, like, and my barrister's like, I don't know what's going on. But, we took it there, they showed the footage and, we got it squashed. But to them, it didn't matter. She didn't lose any money.
Yeah.
Her barristers, they didn't care. They still get paid.
Well,
So-
see, and that's what my dad went through. He had like a whole paper trail of money that he I don't want to say spent, but of money that he had given to her to help support us as kids. And yeah, because he had this whole paper trail, he was able to prove and prove and prove again that he had been supporting us, even though she was lying to child support the whole time, saying that he wasn't supporting us. And this is why it kept dragging out, because she continued to lie and continued to say that, oh, no, he's not giving me any money. He's not supporting me and the kids. And then, that was yesterday when I had the conversation with Dad. That's when he said once I'd turned 16, that was the time when he actually got allocated a child support person.
Yep.
So he got allocated an actual caseworker to work with him to be able to fight on his behalf with her legal team or with her to actually make her responsible for all the lies that she'd been telling for years and years and years.
Yep.
To say that he hadn't been supporting us the whole time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, child support is, I'll touch on my episode, the powers they have is crazy.
So that's the stress that I'm going through right now as a separated person. Like, as a separated person, like, today's day and age, it's expensive to live, right? So I'm going through, like, the government assistance to try and get rent assistance and family benefit and all that sort of stuff as a single mum, which I'm entitled to. But in order to apply for rent assistance, I need to lodge a claim with child support and I need to tell them that I'm separated and I need to tell them who I'm separated from and I need to tell them that we've got a private arrangement in place and that he's paying me maintenance.
Yep.
And, like, that's a stress for me because I don't want them chasing him.
Yeah.
And then causing an issue.
Bad position.
Yeah. I don't want it causing an issue between us. Like, I at the moment, we've got a really good working relationship. But in order for me, because my goal is to not have him paying me maintenance anymore. Because we're 50-50.
Yep.
He shouldn't have to pay me maintenance. And I want to get to a point where I'm financially independent and on my own, which I'm getting to.
Yeah.
But one way that can help me is if I'm getting rent assistance through Centrelink.
Yeah.
Then he doesn't have to pay me whatever he's paying me.
Yeah.
But the fact is I don't want them chasing him to be like, hey, this is what you owe her.
Which then puts stress on your guys' relationship.
Yeah.
Your co-parenting relationship.
Yeah.
It's good that you view things that way. And, like, for people listening or watching, like, I'm pro child support, right? I just don't think they calculate things right.
No.
And for example, the most recent one, they've calculated that I'm on $310,000 a year. Who's on 310? And again, it's come from allegations from her. I've sold. She goes, he has this business on the farm. He makes millions of dollars. No, I don't. It's actually sold, and you can see that in my. I'm up to date with my tax, but they always go off what she says, and it's just a tactic from her. She slams these allegations, and I have to justify. So they change the assessment, then I have to go through with a reply. It's just.
Which is more time.
And energy,
money.
taxing, Again, another system that she's learned to use against you. It's just a tactic play. So
Yeah.
And, like, I actually initiated child support. When we split, I was just like, my daughter's out there, like, I got to. So I actually called child support and they spoke to me. I remember. I said, hey, my name's Jared. Listen, we've split. I don't know how this works, but I need to be paying child support. Oh, Mr. Purcell, that's so nice of you. You're doing the right thing. Like, spoke to me like this. And then at the time they called her and they called me back. Said, oh, she's knocked it back. I was like, again, we had cut comms. I don't know where she was. I said, that doesn't make sense. Fast forward, when we were in court, I realised she was getting this DV payment. So you're not allowed to get two payments at once. Once that ran out, then But when they called me back, you should have heard the tone, Mr. Purcell, you need to be paying child support. I was like, whoa. Calm down. Like, I know. I called you guys. She said, no, well, you need to be paying now. Like, the tone just changed like that.
Yeah. And you think they'd have like some sort of written record there?
Right, I said that to her. I said, well, can you put this on record?
Yeah.
I want a letter sent to me that she's knocked it back, you know? And again, they don't, I put on my settings, contact me via email because I always want paper trail.
Yeah.
Oh, no, they don't do it, you know? Call my phone. And then I said, when they called me on time, I said, hold on, I need to record this. She goes, oh, you're not allowed to record. I said, well, you're recording me. At the start of every phone call, it says we're recording. Yes, but you're not allowed to record. I said, well, what rights is that?
Yeah.
You have the right to record me. I don't have the right to. Oh, because I said, well, I don't have the power to go press the button and they automatically record. I said, that's fine. I'm happy for you to record me. Record this conversation, but I'm informing you that I'm recording this conversation. No, you're not allowed to do that. I record with my pen and paper.
Yeah. I'd be recording anyway. I'd be like, well, you don't know what I'm doing. So
yeah. Whenever I stepped in that courtroom, I took note of every person that represented her because for me, that person was playing a part and separating me from my daughter. I've got the names of everyone, you know. So, all right, where are we? Have we missed anything?
Like I was really surprised when you reached back out and were like, oh, you need to come on and have a chat to me, because I just wanted to reach out to you and tell you that, like, because I've got kids too, I think it hits me harder. And I know what it would be like. Because you made the analogy before about the lost wallet or the lost phone. I've been out in public with my kids and my daughter had just learned how to walk.
Yeah, she just wandered off. The corner. Yeah.
And she was a wanderer, right? And she just wandered off and there was fucking people everywhere and I was freaking out. It was like the worst feeling I've ever had in my entire life.
And then to
have that prolonged, I couldn't imagine having a worse pain felt. You know, it would be like your heart is ripped out the whole time. So that's what really motivated me to want to reach out because I watched that clip on your Instagram and I was just like, that is literally the most fucked thing I've ever heard in my entire life. And then it made me think about my childhood and then it made me think like, you know, what I've done in the last few years and how I've wanted to get my dad's side of the story and I've wanted to really try and repair. I'm never going to get those years back. He's never going to get those years back. But I've tried to work as hard as I can to try and rebuild our relationship and as a daughter from that kind of background, she's going to want to do that as well. She's going to want to know you. She's going to want to know who her dad is one day. And she probably says it now, you know, and I don't want to upset you, but you know, she would be yearning for her dad now, you know, and that's the fuck thing, you know.
It's hard because I haven't heard my daughter say dad yet, so she has speech delay. I've heard her say mama once, but she's a smart girl, and I remember when I didn't know what I had heard of autism, but I never knew exactly what it was. But I remember seeing her, unfortunately, in the children's centre, just some weird behaviours. Like she'd sit there and she'd sort of like rock back and forth. I was like, oh, that's weird. I haven't seen that before. And like she'd sort of put her hands over her ears, and whenever she walked through hallway, she was just kind of off. She just sort of, her shoulder would clip the side of the hallway. She's a bit off balance, and then the testing came through, and then you know that process was chasing reports. Oh, you're the father. We're not going to send the reports. You need permission of them. You just felt so. As a father, you would
feel like a third citizen, a third-class citizen.
Like
for them to go, how dare you want to have access to your daughter's medical records when you're the father? Like that.
I had to get. I would send an email to the speech service. Hi, my name is Jay. I'd send 100 points of identification, passport, driver's license, all signed off. I'm the father. Can I put? No, we need the mother's permission. Oh no, she said that there's a DV on you. No, like wherever she would go, I have a DV on him. He's a monster, you know. And that was her main goal, to paint me out. Because she wanted to relocate, pay me out to be a big monster. And you know, this is why I'm doing the platform. Like, and I appreciate you reaching out. A lot of people freak out when I reply to them. They're like, "Oh, I wasn't expecting you to reply." I'm like, I reply to everyone. You know, it might take time, but I reply to everyone. I know I do a lot of people freak out because I do videos, and I'm always on the go. It's easier. And I get a lot of people that just reach out, and I'm like, "Man, can you please come on?" They're like, "Oh, you know, sure," like, you know. So
I think it's a really good thing what you're doing.
No, thank you.
I think it's really important to get this message out and just try and realign the scales because like I know when I was little, the scales were way, way out of balance and I feel like they started to come back, but I feel like unfortunately a lot of the recent modern movements in feminism and while they've been awesome and it's been really good to see women being recognised as, you know, as just as equal as men with pay rights and all that sort of thing. And a lot of the Me Too stuff brought out some really good things with how women were treated in the workplace and sexual harassment and all that sort of stuff. Like it's been awesome in that respect. But like you said before, there's always going to be people out there that manipulate the system. That's right. You know, and unfortunately, this is another thing that's being manipulated by some women to use it as a way to be able to get more money or to not allow men to have access to their kids. Yeah, to be spiteful, to be horrible people, you know.
I've got some questions here before we conclude. I asked the same questions to all the fathers. Now, you're the first female I've had on, daughter. So I don't want to change the questions. So the questions might come off a bit different, but I think I should just keep the questions. They're obviously directed at the father, but if I can keep the questions the same and you just answer them the best as you can by coming from a broken daughter's side of view. So the first question is, do you have any advice for fathers? Knowing what you know now, would you have changed anything during the court process? Now, obviously, this is different for you because you went directly through the court process, but you were a daughter of one. How could you best maybe answer that question, which is a bit hard?
Advice I would give to fathers is don't give up. Don't lose faith.
Yep.
While you physically can't be there for your children or, you know, see them day to day or talk to them day to day, you know, maybe keep a diary, keep a video diary, you know, send letters, whether or not they get read or not to the child. You know, do what you can to try and be in your child's life, whichever way you can, because one day they'll want to know your story and they'll want to reach out, and they won't. They shouldn't take the narrative of the mum 100%. Every child wants to know their dad.
That's a good point. I had a father the other day bring up saying that you should make an email in your daughter's name. Don't tell anyone the email, and just give it to your family. And anyone that's got photos, send it direct to that email. You know, pictures. You want to write letters, and then when she gets older, you can give her the email and the password. She can log in, and then she can see all the diary notes things. So
she can see, or they can see how much you were on their mind.
Yeah, all the time.
And how much you did want to be there for them while you couldn't physically. You still were.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably the biggest advice. And the thing that I would change would just be how I was as a teenager. You know, I really regret not wanting to be around my dad when I was a teenager. Yeah. That's probably my biggest regret in life.
Yeah. How do we change the system? I don't even know. I
think this is a really good way to change the system.
Thank you.
It's just to get
raise awareness.
These stories out there and let people know. You know, while the court system is really good at doing what it does, it can be very imbalanced at times, and we need to kind of shift the scales back so both sides of the fence are represented equally, which is how it should be. You know, parenthood is 50-50 and it should be represented that way in the court system. Funny question. You're on death row. The guard comes and asks you, what do you want for your final meal, drink, dessert? Drink. Oh, my God. I think it'd just have to be some sort of coffee. That's so boring, but... What's your go-to coffee? I do like a long black. I'm pretty straight up with a coffee, like a long black with a caramel shot. So... yeah. Meal. I don't know. Something really fatty and cheesy and what's your go-to fat food? What's your go-to takeaway? I I love a good Aussie burger, you know, like with a big slab of beef on
Yeah,
there,
yeah.
big beef
Big
risole
patty.
with some extra cheese
Cheese.
and pineapple, tomato,
Yeah,
beetroot,
yeah.
onion, a lot of sauce.
What about
Give me one of
dessert?
those. Dessert has to be like a gooey chocolate cake, I think.
Ooh, yeah.
Something that runs out.
I'm a sticky date type
Oh,
of guy.
yeah, I don't mind the sticky date, yeah.
Extra. I has to have 2 scoops of ice cream.
Yeah,
and heaps
yeah,
of sauce. Yeah.
Yeah, I could do that too. Yeah.
And the last question, this will differ all fathers and mothers, and obviously just depending where you're at in life. Any message for your children?
Whatever's happened between your dad and I, we both love you, and we've always wanted to support you guys 100%, and that's always been our main goal. With you guys and raising you guys, and you guys are our number one priority, and whatever's happened in the background is we've always known that we wanted to keep you our number one priority. So
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Well said. Before I wrap up, let's hand over to you. Is there anything you want to say? Maybe some people say they might have social media platforms. Maybe someone wants to do jiu-jitsu, or they want to reach out to you somehow. You don't have to. Some people would like to be left alone.
Yeah, I think everyone should do jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think jiu-jitsu definitely saved. It's such a cliche thing to say, but getting into jiu-jitsu really, really
Builds
saved
confidence.
me. Yeah, it definitely did.
Good for the mind.
Yeah. So that was, it's definitely been the best thing I've ever done in my life, especially as a female. If you're a female, do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. You got to do some sort of martial art, but jiu-jitsu is really, really good for females. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, listen, on behalf of everyone listening on the podcast, I'd like to thank you for coming on and reaching out. I think you're the first episode where I've done a daughter, and I think a lot of the broken fathers and broken daughters will appreciate you coming on and giving your side of the story, what it was like growing up. And I think it's going to encourage more people to come on, and I think the more people come on and tell their stories, I think this podcast is going to save lives. I don't blow smoke up me bum, but when I think a lot of people keep a lot of trauma and they don't want to tell their stories, but when people open up,
especially men.
Yeah, man. Yeah. People see me deployed multiple countries. I'll cry for my daughter all the time. And people see them. Oh fuck. I want to. He's open up. I'll open up. So, and there might be more broken doors that want to come on, open up. Now that you've come on, so on behalf of everyone listening and watching, I'd like to thank you for coming on and reaching out. And if I ever pull a shift with you and the code goes off, I'll send you in first. And wish you all the best in the future. And thanks for coming on.
Yeah, same to you. I hope one day, you get reunited back with your daughter again. And
Cheers.
It's been really good to meet you and
Thank you.
come and have a chat. And I really, really hope everything works out.
Yeah, I'll make sure to come back one day.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Yep.
All right, thank you.
Thank
Cheers.
you.
Thanks for coming on. Cheers, bro.
That was
Give you a hug.
fun.
Thanks for that.
Oh, thank you.
Appreciate that.